After past heartbreaks, Aryna Sabalenka learns her path to first Indian Wells title. Aryna Sabalenka has learned her possible path to finally making an Indian Wells breakthrough and winning her first title in the desert after losing a few finals in the past. The top seed has a first-round bye and will then likely meet a pair of rising stars, Alicia Parks, 2R, and Maya Joint, 3R. In the round of 16, Sabalenka could meet a fellow four-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka or rising star Iva Jovic, whom she defeated in the Australian Open quarterfinal. The projected Indian Wells quarterfinal action is slated to feature a rematch of last year's US Open final between Sabalenka and Amanda Anisimova, while the Belarusian's possible semifinal opponent is Coco Gauff. That would be a rematch of the 2023 US Open final. Since IGA Swiatek is the highest seed in the bottom half, the Pole and the Belarusian are the projected Indian Wells finalists. Can Sabalenka make her third Indian Wells final and make it a third time a charm? In 2023, Sabalenka reached her maiden Indian Wells final before losing to Aryna Rybakina. Last year, the 27-year-old made second her final in the desert. And while the world number one made a strong start, she failed to keep up with the same intensity for the rest of the match as Mira Andreeva stormed back to win 2-6-6 to 4-6-3. Honestly, was me against me. I made a lot of unforced errors on important points, and I just let her play a little bit better. At the beginning, everything was going quite straightforward, and then I just made a couple mistakes. She kind of believed in herself. After that, I started playing much worse, and I was just trying to find my rhythm back but didn't work this time, the world number one said after losing in last year's final to Andreeva. After losing in this year's Australian Open final to Aryna Rybakina, the Belarusian missed the entire Middle East swing and gave herself some nice rest. Sabalenka enters Indian Wells re-energized, and it remains to be seen if that will help her finally make it all the way in the desert. After past heartbreaks, Aryna Sabalenka learns her path to first Indian Wells title. The desert does not forgive easily. At the foot of the Santa Rosa Mountains, where the wind carries whispers of near misses and unfinished dreams, champions are not simply crowned, they are tested. For years, Aryna Sabalenka walked the sun-baked courts of Indian Wells Open with the weight of expectation pressing against her shoulders like the desert heat. She had the power. She had the ranking. She had the roar. But the title, her first in this oasis of prestige, remained stubbornly out of reach. They call it the Fifth Slam, this tournament officially known as the BNP Paribas Open. It carries a peculiar gravity. The air is thin with pressure, thick with history. Champions are made here not only through talent, but through resilience. For Sabalenka, resilience was not a trait she was born with. It was forged in heartbreak. The echoes of almost. There were years when her game felt like a storm. Balls exploded off her racket with ferocity. Opponents flinched. Crowds gasped. She could overwhelm anyone. But tennis is not conquered by force alone. There were matches at Indian Wells when her power betrayed her. Double faults crept in at the worst moments. Leads dissolved like mirages. In the decisive stages, when stillness matters most, her mind would race ahead of her feet. Each loss carved a quiet wound. The desert became a mirror, reflecting not just her strengths, but her vulnerabilities. And vulnerability is not something Sabalenka once embraced easily. She was known for intensity, for raw emotion. When frustration surged, it showed. When confidence dipped, it echoed in the rhythm of her serve. Yet heartbreak has a way of teaching what victory cannot. The lessons in losing. There is a particular silence that follows a crushing defeat. Not the noise of commentary or the buzz of social media, but the inward silence. The kind that forces an athlete to confront herself without applause. Sabalenka learned to sit in that silence. She began to understand that her greatest opponent was not standing across the net. It was the version of herself who panicked under pressure. The version who measured success only in trophies. To grow, she had to reframe the narrative. Instead of chasing the title at Indian Wells, she focused on mastering moments. Instead of fearing the double fault, she rebuilt her serve from its foundations: toss, rhythm, breath. She studied not only technique but temperament. The desert became her classroom, redefining strength. Power had always been her signature, but strength, she discovered, was something quieter. Strength was walking onto Stadium 1 court not with defiance, but with clarity. Strength was missing a first serve and calmly preparing for the second. Strength was trusting that a rally could be constructed, not just detonated. She began to welcome patience into her game. The crowd at Indian Wells, sophisticated and watchful, sensed the shift. There was still thunder in her forehand. But now there was also calculation. Discipline. Her journey mirrored that of many champions who stumbled before they soared. In tennis history, the desert has humbled giants before rewarding them. Sabalenka was learning that the path to glory is rarely linear. The turning point, the year she finally found her rhythm in Indian Wells, did not begin with guarantees. It began with quiet determination. Early rounds tested her composure. A tight tiebreak here. A mid-match momentum swing there. But instead of spiraling, she recalibrated. Between points, her breathing slowed. Her gaze steadied. Where once there had been visible frustration, there was now measured resolve. Semifinals brought familiar pressure, the kind that once tightened her swing. Yet she moved through it with composure that felt almost foreign compared to years prior. In the final, under the desert sky glowing pink at dusk, the weight of past heartbreaks hovered, but did not control her. Each game won felt less like a conquest of her opponent and more like a reconciliation with her former self. The moment arrives. Championship point at Indian Wells does not come gently. The crowd leans forward. The air stiffens. Time distorts. Sabalenka bounced the ball deliberately. The desert wind toyed with her ponytail. She inhaled, exhaled, and delivered a serve not fueled by desperation, but by trust. The rally that followed was neither frantic nor reckless. It was purposeful, patient. When the final shot landed beyond her opponent's reach, there was a split second of disbelief before reality surged in. She had done it, not through brute force alone, but through evolution. As she fell to her knees on the hard court, the roar that enveloped Stadium 1 was not just for a champion, it was for a journey completed. Beyond the trophy, titles are tangible. They gleam under stadium lights. They occupy shelves and record books. But Sabalenka's first Indian Wells crown represented something far more intimate. It symbolized mastery over doubt. It marked the transformation of heartbreak into fuel. It proved that growth is rarely visible in highlight reels, but always evident in defining moments. The desert that once mirrored her frustration now reflected her composure. The same courts that had exposed her vulnerabilities now showcased her maturity. And perhaps most importantly, she understood that this victory did not erase the past. It honored it. Every double fault that once